Well, he won 29 of 32 arguments before the United States Supreme Court. He was a federal appeals court judge and served as Solicitor General of the U.S. And Thurgood Marshall did all of that before serving as a Supreme Court justice for 24 years. Joining us now is the law professor of University of Maryland, that's Larry Gibson, who recently wrote a book called Young Thurgood, The Making of a Supreme Court Justice. And welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Well, first off, tell us a little bit about why you decided to do this. I know there are other biographies out there.
I decided that there needed to be a book about the young Thurgood, the forces that shaped and molded him. So it's less a book about what Thurgood Marshall did than it is about what he was like. And it turns out there are really two characters. There's Thurgood Marshall up to the age of 30 and the state of Maryland from the beginning of the 20th century through the Great Depression, because that's the environment that shaped Thurgood Marshall.
We're looking at your book right now. So tell us a little bit. You actually met him in an unusual circumstance. Tell us about that.
I first met Thurgood Marshall in 1975 when I went to his house late one night to get him to sign a court order. The book also has the last time I met was with Thurgood Marshall, which was 1985. He came to a ceremony in Baltimore, and I asked him to take a photograph with me. It was taking the photographer a long time to take the picture, and Thurgood Marshall turns to me and said, "What am I supposed to do, kiss you?" So the last thing that Thurgood Marshall ever said to me was, "What am I supposed to do, kiss you?" You know, there's a lot of Prince George's County and Montgomery County, interestingly enough, in this book. People think of Thurgood Marshall as a Baltimore lawyer, but he practiced all over the state. His first important criminal case was in Prince George's County. His first civil rights case, it was a police brutality case, was a trial that he won in Upper Marlboro. The first teacher pay case that equalized the pay between white teachers and black teachers was in Montgomery County. So this traces his birth, his early years, and the first few years of his practice, and it deals with Maryland's sociology, politics during that time.
You know, usually when we think of Thurgood Marshall, we think of the Brown versus Board of Education, his impact on racial segregation, but you also talk a little bit about his coming to be in the field, in education, and how difficult it was for him to achieve his law degree.
One thing that I show in the book, that his founding was much poorer than most writers have given the impression. And it was quite a struggle to just get into college because of the economics and to stay there. And then we watch him through, in the first 3 years of law practice, choose to work on time-consuming civil rights matters when he could have been making more money in his law practice. We watch him realize that what he really is a civil rights advocate.
And you talk a little about some of his mentors, his time going through the Great Depression, how those affected him growing up.
Maryland history has a real impact on him. This was a state where the governor, Albert Ritchie, who had run against Theodore Roosevelt, was very much against the New Deal programs. And so Maryland got far less than its share of those programs. And so we had a prolonged depression. And it's in that environment that Thurgood Marshall becomes a lawyer and tries to start a law practice. And as I said, throughout the book, there are these two characters, Marshall and this environment, this state, which is sort of the most northern southern state, the most southern northern state, and its sort of ambiguous attitude about race. All of that shaped Marshall's priorities, shaped his attitude, and really shaped his work habits also.
Obviously, Thurgood Marshall was somewhat of a trendsetter, particularly in the African-American community and in terms of law. You've now been a professor 40 years. How have you seen differences? What has changed and what hasn't?
Well, yes, I've taught at University of Maryland School of Law for 38 years. Before that, I taught at the University of Virginia. When I got admitted to the practice, we averaged 2 new black attorneys per year. In my year, it was 3. The year before me, there was 1. The year after me, there was none. I am the 130th African-American lawyer in the history of Maryland. Thurgood Marshall was the 60th. The major change has been that over a period of time, starting really in the 80s, the blacks began to enter the legal profession in a higher number, and now are starting to approach the percentage in the population.
And just briefly before we close, this book is not aimed directly at law students. It's for everyone to read?
It's aimed for the public generally. There are 188 images in there. In addition to photographs, you see all of his transcripts and other documents. And so it's purposely written to be read by and enjoyed by people of different ages and of different interests.
And great piece of history there.
Thank
All
you
right,
very much.
Thank you so much. And if you would like more information on Professor Gibson's book, you can go to youngthurgood.com.